Thanks. So yeah, I am Yasmine. I am a single mum of two from and in still London. I've been single parent for 2 years after splitting up with the father of my children, my ex. We were together for 17 years. So from the age of about, I think I was 16 to 33, and I'm now 35. So in terms of, obviously this is about sort of confidence after being in a domestic abuse situation. The relationship was controlling and abusive the whole time, but I actually didn't understand or know about that until after the split. I sort of say that like that because so many people are like, how did you know in 17 years? So basically what happened was I didn't have a particularly nice childhood, so my expectations for life were low, and as teenagers we got on really well, we had fun, there wasn't really any responsibilities and stuff, and we got on quite well. He did show like what I now know, I don't think that even existed back in 2002, like red flags, right from the get-go in terms of sort of being really controlling. But as a child, still a child, I guess, who had been kind of in really sort of awful abusive situations as a child, I just thought it was one of those things. And I actually remember really vividly immediately thinking, oh, I must try harder. That was like my thing sort of throughout the whole relationship, was that I must try harder to be better, to be acceptable, to be accepted, and to be what is expected. I think one of my children might be coming. I'm on the call now. Classic. I think it's because she can hear me talking. Stay on your iPads and I'll be back. I don't think she's going to come down. So where was I? So red flags from early on, controlling, emotional stuff, gaslighting, all of these terms I just had absolutely obviously no idea when I was a sort of young teenager. I left home at 16 to live with him, and that was it really. I just sort of built my life within the walls of what he believed things should be like. And then as time went on, obviously lots of things happened over the years. There was accusations of me like cheating constantly. I got to the point where I didn't go to uni because it was too far. I didn't wear makeup because he would question who it was from, who it was for. I didn't, like in festivals and clubs, I'd go to the toilet, pretend to be pregnant to get to the front of the queue so that I could rush back, so I couldn't be accused of doing anything while I was at the toilet with someone else. All sorts of absolutely bizarre, like continuously, but it was all I knew. And I just tried harder and harder and harder to not make the same mistakes, and be a better girlfriend. Later on in life, obviously we had kids, we bought a flat, and I think looking back, I sort of really focused on my career because that was something that I could call mine and I could control, and I was allowed to go out, leave the house for it, because much later on I wasn't really allowed to leave the house unless it was for the kids or for work. To add, actually, I was never ever told you can't do that. It was just coercive and like gaslighting. So I was never like, for example, asked if I could, can you watch the kids so that I can go and get my hair cut? It's been a year. And the answer would be, why don't you book a day off work to do that? And it's like, actually an hour on a Saturday would just be so much more convenient, but okay, that's fine. I'll go and make it my problem only because, they're my kids. Anyway, that went on. And eventually towards the last 3 years, so from sort of 2017, he'd had a bit of a breakdown, mental health issues, which exacerbated things, started some sort of counselling and therapy, and then decided that I had been controlling him for years and years, and the accusations and all of that became a lot bigger. And this really wore me down. So I'd already become this person who, you know, I didn't have any kind of idea of what self-care was. Like, obviously, you know, I was clean and I had clean clothes, and nobody would notice, but I never did anything for me. And, you know, I very rarely like paint my nails. I wouldn't really wear makeup. And it was always because that would attract other men, even though I was completely faithful for the whole time. That seemed to be the biggest issue. So I kind of just, in that time, never really got to find out who I was, and definitely felt bad about sort of a lot of things about me, because there was never a compliment, just put downs like the whole time. So yeah, mental breakdown, and then he became violent and drinking a lot, and actually quite, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I don't know what was going on in his head, but he started putting bugs in the house. It became really severe, and eventually he cheated on me about 10 times, prostitutes, all sorts, and eventually he strangled me, and the police came, because I was actually on the phone to an ambulance because I was concerned about him, but then that happened and that they heard it, and so they sent police. So he, and you know, actually not very common, but he actually got a conviction for strangling me, and I still took him back after that. So pretty severe in terms of like the brainwashing. Took him back, and then eventually about 6 months after that, he cheated again. And for some reason, that was finally enough for me to say, I'm done. And I genuinely didn't have an inkling that that was an abusive relationship. I honestly 100% believed that all of those things happened to me because I wasn't good enough. I wasn't pretty enough, I wasn't thin enough, I wasn't clever enough, because that is the way that he made me feel by the things that he said and the things that he asked. And sometimes outright, that's the things he said. As he left the relationship, some of the last things that he said were that I would never find anyone else because I was utterly disgusting. And so that's sort of like, it's almost like he wanted that to stay with me even when he was gone. So I, at the beginning, was in absolute bits because I had been trying for so many years to make it all okay and be better so that he would be happy, so that everything would be fine. But very quickly I started to realise that bits of life and of me were just sort of creeping in naturally. So I started to enjoy cooking, and I hadn't been doing that because my cooking wasn't good enough. And I started to write them down. I started to write down these like new things I was discovering about myself. And I remember going to a department store and looking at the lipsticks, like, oh my God, I'm allowed to buy a lipstick now. And I took a photo and I was just like, wow, this is, you know, lipstick isn't going to make who you are, but it was just really refreshing to just go and do that. So yeah, I started to write down these things. And it was quite quick that I realised that I was sort of having to discover who I was, and also question and challenge who I believed I was as a result of the things that I had been told by him. I went on Freedom Programme course to fully understand, and it helped me no end to believe that I was a victim of abuse, because I was like, he didn't mean to, did he? I was so sort of in it that I just couldn't believe that he was this person. And the more I understood, the easier I found it to trust myself again, to believe in myself. And I think those are the things that sort of led to me getting, you know, the beginnings of me starting to get my confidence back. I've always been quite a sort of say it how it is kind of a person in environments where he wasn't there. So at work, you know, lots of people quite liked me, and I think I honestly believe that like a lot of people will have somewhere in their lives where they can feel like they're really themselves. And for me, that was work. So I just carried on with that in mind, carried on writing down these things that I was like noticing about myself, and actually trying to take a little bit of time, when obviously who has time, but you know, like 10 minutes before bed, to just reflect on the parts of me that I was starting to see again, or starting to see for the first time in my case, because I'd been in that relationship all of my adult life. So that's how it all started. And then for me personally, I'm quite senior in my job. I'm very confident at work. So I just started to really think about, how can I be that person there? And I'm such a different person here. So I struggled to look at myself in the mirror. I didn't like wearing clothes. I wouldn't buy certain clothes because even if I bought 2 sizes up, I was scared of them not fitting me. Like it wasn't at all about what size I was or how much I weighed or anything. It was just, it's not going to be okay on me, or I'm not going to look okay in that, because I was so used to everything just being a slight problem. I had no friends when I came out of that relationship because I'd become so isolated. And because we'd met so young, we only had mutual friends, which I left behind with him. I felt really alone. And the thought of like ever dating again or meeting someone else, just like, it was all just seemed like it was, you know, like on Mars, like I'm never going to reach those kind of things. But I had this juxtaposition of I had this juxtaposition of having the really confident version of me at work, and I wanted to sort of have that in my everyday. So like I said, I started to write down the things that I was noticing about myself. I started to try and reflect daily on essentially who I was. I know that sounds like a big sort of question, but I really didn't have a sense of who I was. I've since become a coach, and I work with a lot of women on confidence. And the thing that I always say is, confidence, when I don't know, you know, what you guys think, but when you think about it, it often comes with, you know, like standing up straight and tall, wearing certain clothes, being bold, colour, all these kinds of things. And actually, I just don't think it's about any of that. True confidence for me is when you are able to be yourself. So like real authentically you. And I think if you've been in an abusive relationship, that is the bit of you that gets sort of stunted or hidden, or because I never just acted the way that I would naturally when I was just being myself. I always had this little check of, is he going to be okay with that? Is that going to be okay? Is that going to be good enough? And learning to remove that question and just being yourself, I think, is the biggest thing to getting confidence back. And the reason I say that is I think that people around you will pick up on it, will see it, you'll feel it more. Just being and obviously it has to be a sort of safe space. You have to be with people that you trust, that you like, that you love. And if you've got, you know, one friend, try like sharing a little bit more than you usually do and seeing how it goes. Like kind of so I would think of things, okay, I'm going to try and do this today. I'm going to try and do this today when I felt a bit better and I was having a good day. So for example, this is pre-COVID, I went to the pub and had a drink on my own. It was, you know, I didn't have very many friends, and it was an evening when my ex had the kids, and I was sick of sitting in the house being really sad, not knowing what to do. with myself or how to make friends. I didn't go to the pub and suddenly get a great social life, but just the act of going and having a couple of drinks and then coming home was such a big deal to me. I was scared to leave the house, scared to go out on my own, scared to sit in a pub, scared that a bloke might talk to me, even though there wasn't an ex to be annoyed about it. So it's just sort of really slowly pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And I think if you've got friends around you, that's a really good opportunity to sort of work with them. You know, and if they're good friends, you can say, you know, these are the things that I wish I could do, and I don't feel comfortable doing them, but I'm going to give it a go. Will you come with me? Will you, you know, give me a call to make sure I'm all right, and sort of set up some safety nets for yourself. But yeah, that's I've made some notes. I'm just checking my notes. Authentically yourself, working out who you are, and this is the other thing. So I actually, you know, I had some therapy, I had a life coach. I did spend a lot of time, quite an intense period of time in my life, like really trying to work this out. And I don't think that's for everybody. I think everyone's different. But for me, I'd obviously been in this relationship for 17 years, all of my adult life, since I was a child. If I'm honest, I felt like I was pumped out the other end, not really knowing who I was. So I felt like I needed to really sort of quickly get to grips with as much of that as I could. And I worked with a life coach for a little while, and actually she's a really good friend still now. And she made me realise that I had never had a concept of self-care. And, you know, like people talk about self-care all the time, and then especially on like social media, they're like, oh, self-care is so important, and they've booked themselves into a spa for the weekend. Well, it's not realistic, either time or money. But my coach was saying, she was like, you know, when's the last time you had an extra 5 minutes in the shower, or give yourself a hug? I laugh because for me that was just so out there. I was like, what do you mean give myself a hug? That's just nuts. And all I'd say, like meditation, like all these little things, which I sort of, you know, rightly or wrongly lump under like potentially a bit woo-woo or whatever, that, you know, they're not, they work. But for me at the time, I was like, this is weird. You can't do that. You can't like sing in the shower. Who's going to hear you? Like things like that. I found it real. I mean, I'm sort of like cringing a little bit now saying it, but I do these things as much as I can remember to. And yeah, it felt really weird and awkward at the beginning, but those kind of things helped boost my mood, helped me experiment again, like I say, with who I was as a person and what I enjoyed and what I liked. And it was through, you know, all trying out all of these different things, continually writing them down and reflecting on them, and like what worked well and what didn't work well, really trying to notice how I feel. And I think the more in touch with myself I was, and who I am, and what I like and what I don't like, and, you know, there's lots of other things that you need to do when you're coming out or have come out of an abusive situation, in terms of like learning what your boundaries are, or learning what you want them to be, because it's not always that easy to have the boundaries that you should have. So it's, yeah, all of these things. And for me, it was just writing them all down. And it wasn't consistent, don't get me wrong. I had some real car crash months in the beginning. You know, it's not sort of consistently this wonderful sort of like journey of learning who I am. It was up and down. There were, you know, even as not that long ago, especially obviously with COVID and everything, that I think it threw a massive spanner in the works for all of us. Yeah, it really knocked me, and I spent a lot of time really quite upset, and I sort of felt like I'd gone back. But yeah, so it's not linear and it's not easy, but yeah, it's that practice of those different things, like giving yourself a hug in the shower. I didn't know if anyone had any questions at this point. I haven't read what's coming up.
There's some really lovely comments that have kind of gone into the chat. So Callie said, I also think confidence comes from trusting yourself. Coming out of such a nasty relationship, I also lost trust in myself and my ability to genuinely look out for me. This is something I struggle with. Stephanie said, this really resonates. Sam has said, you have to find your identity, and it's a great opportunity to build on yourself and have almost a fresh start and figure out how you tick and what you want from life. You can put a positive spin on it sometimes. So I think definitely, like what you've been saying, really resonates with a lot of people, which is brilliant. There's another, so Callie's then said, not long after we split, I was in a bit of a state, and I made a Spotify playlist of quite empowering songs and happy feel-good songs. I play this in the morning to try and change my mood for the day. Yeah, I think that's a really good tip.
And that's that is, you're doing something for yourself that you want to do. There's songs that you want to hear. And, you know, I'm a bit stop-start because I know that everybody's experiences are so different, but I imagine that lots of people learn to put other people before them and other people's needs and other people's wants, and even if it isn't, other people's approval as well. And it was just, yeah, when I was unraveling all of this stuff, it just became just really apparent how little I knew myself. It was a self-discovery journey, but also how little I did for myself. So like having that Spotify playlist is, you know, that's it, you've got it, it's yours, it's really personal. And I think, yeah, the more and more I learned to like myself, trust myself, all of this stuff that's been coming out, love myself, the more I did that, the more confident I became. It's like, you know, everybody sort of, from a young age, we talk about confidence, like, oh, this child's confident and this child's not confident. Confidence is internal. It's not, I'm really loud, or I'm really happy to stand at the front, or I always want to take part. That isn't confidence. Confidence is inside you. And another thing that when you're so used to appeasing someone else whose expectations are unhealthy or unrealistic or whatever, I think it's really easy to come out of that and have a view of, okay, well, I will be confident when I do this, do that, can wear that, can look like that, but that is all, it's still being confident based on what other people think of you, because you're so used to being, saying, talking, acting how somebody else wants you to, even if it's not like really obviously overt, but just like not doing the wrong thing, not saying the wrong thing, not getting in someone's way or whatever it is. You're so busy putting that person above yourself that actually, you know, my view on what confidence was definitely crafted by what I thought my peers, potential dates, other mums at the school gate. It was, what did I think what did I have to look like for them? I don't mean look like physically, but what did I have to look and sound and behave for them to all think that I'm confident? But actually, that's absolutely the opposite of what matters. It's completely internal. When you're happy with yourself and you're comfortable in your decisions and you're living your life for yourself and your children, and you're putting yourself first, you naturally will feel confident and other people will notice it.
Oh, I love that. I feel like it's a real like confidence boost, kind of just listening. It's really nice. I think someone else has just said, I struggle on my confidence with parenting my son. I had a traumatic childhood and an abusive relationship with my son's father. I never had role models growing up, so most days I have to ask if what I'm doing is right. So I don't know if you've got any kind of bits of advice for that person.
I massively resonate with that, actually. So obviously, having had quite a difficult childhood growing up, I also didn't have role models. I actually wasn't even very confident or sure that I wanted to be a parent, based on the fact that I had no idea what normal families looked like or felt like to be part of. So I was petrified when I was pregnant with my son and had him. And I remember having really basic stuff, honestly, really basic stuff. I remember having to remind myself to hug him. I'm sure I was doing it enough, but I was really conscious, like, hug your children, hug your children. You're supposed to hug your children, because I didn't have that. So I totally resonate with the sort of like not having the role model. But what I would say is just reading what you've written, like, you are conscious of it. You're asking yourself, is this right? I think what you're doing is right, because you wouldn't be asking yourself otherwise, and you wouldn't be that aware of the fact that you are learning with your son on how this works. The one thing I have wanted to do is give my children a completely different childhood to what I had, whether that be more cuddles or let's go to a fun fair, whereas I just didn't really have any contact with my parents most of the time, and we definitely didn't go out as a family. That's like, yeah, basics. But so I still, I mean, the 8 and the 6, I still sort of say to myself, oh, have I given them enough attention? Did I give them a cuddle? Did I say goodnight before they went to bed? I think if you've had that sort of background, that possibly will always be in your mind. But the fact that you are conscious of it and, you know, aware that you didn't have the right role models in your life, and you're probably being way too hard on yourself and beating yourself up. You know, you're asking yourself, am I being a great parent? Like, that's amazing. There are lots of parents that don't worry about it and they just crack on. And you know, obviously I don't know you at all, but I imagine from that question that you are doing a great job. And if there's anything specific in your parenting that you're struggling with, or you just like I definitely say, like, find a network. So I think that depends on what stage of parenting you're in. But I didn't do like cry out and stuff like that, or like sleep training or whatever. That was just something that I chose not to do with my son. He was quite high needs, and he probably would have just thrown up on me within 2 seconds. So I chose not to do that. And at the time, all of my friends thought I was mad. Where was my routine? I was going to mess my son up, and it made me feel really anxious that I was actually doing something wrong, not that I was just doing it differently. So I went and found some mums in a little Facebook group that also were doing things the way I was doing it, and that did help as well. I think sometimes everybody does do things differently, and it's completely okay. But yeah, if I ever feel sort of really unsure about anything like that, I try and just find like a little tribe. And if I then, so years ago, I got out of those Facebook groups because I then was like, cool, okay, yeah, it's fine. And that sort of like 6-month, year phase or whatever it is passes, and then I sort of detached myself and moved on. But yeah, or even reach out to your friends or family or whoever you've got around you. Because the other thing I have found, and I do, you know, it's not rare anymore because we've got social media and lots of people are really willing to talk about it, but I do still get, obviously I'm on Instagram, and I do still get tons and tons of women going, I can't believe you're sort of sharing this is so helpful. But for me, sharing is like really healing and helpful for me. And I think you obviously do not have to start an Instagram and start sharing everything on there, but could there be, you know, who in your family or your friends, your close people that you trust, have you had a chat with them that you're lacking confidence in the way that you're parenting? I think sometimes the people around us that really care absolutely might not know you're feeling that way, but might be the real key to unlocking it and making you feel really great about yourself. So yeah, definitely try and talk to the people that you trust as well.
No, definitely, thank you. And you know, also you guys who are on the call are also on the Frollo app, and you guys can share with the community on there about things, and you know, it can be a really valuable place for advice as well. You mentioned it
as well. If you want to, you can do it anonymously. Yeah,
which is really nice, because definitely if you're feeling really like vulnerable and it's quite a difficult topic, to actually then anonymously be able to post out and say that can almost make it that little bit easier, can't it? Because you don't have your name attached to it, so it's sometimes can be a little bit easier. So I've had another comment sent to me privately from somebody, and it says, I also had a difficult childhood. Fortunately, my mum was a very strong role model, so have always wanted to be a mum myself. I've been a single mum since my daughter was 15 weeks, and for the first year, her dad was AWOL and in and out of our lives. Because of the split, I had to give up our home and was made redundant weeks before returning to work. My only real anchor, and have really felt at sea since. We were together for 15 years since I was 18, so like you, I didn't know how to live as a grown-up by myself. My ex leans on me a lot still emotionally, and I don't want to be his go-to anymore. It seems like harder to break up than when I left him originally.
Sorry. Harder to break up from that sort of like emotional crux situation than when you
actually... I think that's what she's asking.
That's a really hard one. For some ways, for me, when we did eventually split, we really split. We talk about the kids only, like there is nothing else. And that makes my life a hell of a lot easier. I honestly, my advice with this is always that you need like really hard boundaries. I would say it doesn't sound like you can be friends. It's not fair. It's not working. I would just be having nothing to do with him unless it's about the kid or it sounds really harsh compared to where you're at, because it sounds like you kind of are still quite involved, but you need to be having nothing to do with him unless it's something that you need to be talking about. You being any kind of emotional support for that person is damaging for you. I really believe that that's damaging for you. Even if, when I use the term damaging, even if that is your energy is going on that person when it could be going on yourself. It sounds like you've had a lot to deal with in your life, and you should be spending every ounce of energy that you've got building yourself up, not helping him. That sounds really harsh, but that's just really what I really feel, that it's not okay. It's not okay for him to be using you as like an emotional crux. And it's really hard to clean break. It's really hard to do that. But it doesn't sound very healthy, and I would be trying to absolutely put the fortress down, like just completely break away if you can.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
That's what I say. Maybe if that's, I feel like that sounds really dramatic. As my view on an answer to that question, it might be that you need lots of support around you in order to do that. That might be a really difficult thing to do, but you can absolutely, you can talk to people, either people in a similar experience, or, there's help out there like Women's Aid, etc., because it doesn't sound like a healthy friendship, and it's not fair.
No, definitely. That person said thank you. Someone else has said, kind of commenting on that as well, saying, my dad did this with my mum for years. He would call her when he was stressed or upset over something. I think it was quite damaging for her, as he had created an entirely new life but wasn't really allowing her to fully create her own by still contacting. So then I've got another message that's come to me privately from somebody that says, I was sexually abused as a child, and simple things like having lots of cuddle or my son sleeping in my bed makes me judge if my parenting is right or not. I sometimes feel like I don't know what is right or wrong when I'm parenting. I don't like asking for advice from friends and family as I don't want them judging me. I don't know if you've got any kind of, I know that's quite a big question, but whether you've got any thoughts on that.
So initial thought was, you can't give your kids too many cuddles. And my two get in bed with me and sleep in bed with me all the time, and they always want to cuddle me and like wobble my belly and stuff like that. I still walk around naked, have a shower, they have baths together sometimes, like, so all of that, from what the message said, that doesn't sound like there's anything that's not okay there. In terms of people judging you, obviously don't know your situation, I don't know your friends and family. I can completely relate to not being able to speak to friends and family. As I'm sure you can imagine, with the childhood that I had, I can't really trust or support or rely on many members of my family. And so when, as a mum, you do have those questions, or a dad, when as a parent you have those questions, and I think, as a human, your natural instinct would be to go to your parent and what did you do? What did you, and if you can't do that, it does sort of leave a gap. I would just say it might be, don't assume that everybody would judge you, first of all, and don't worry about people judging you. Think about how much do you trust those people with your vulnerability. So less about what they will think of you, because I can assure you, whatever you're thinking, there will be other people in the world that think the same or worry about the same things. And you are not a bad person for questioning and wanting some support with that. In fact, you're a great person because you are wanting some support. So equally, obviously you find it hard to talk to people because you don't want to feel judged. I would just try and park the idea of being judged, because that, you can't control that and it may or may not happen, but just really focus on who could you speak to, that you feel safe speaking to, being a bit more vulnerable. And failing that, I wonder if there's like some support lines or someone that you could maybe speak to anonymously, if that's a really difficult thing to talk to any of your close friends and family about.
Thank you, Yasmine. I'm sure that user really appreciates that advice as well. I know it's a huge topic. She said thank you. So I don't know whether, I know earlier on at kind of the beginning you mentioned about lockdown, and obviously the kind of effects of the last 18 months have had an effect on everybody, but obviously have definitely had an effect on people who might have been through something similar to you, might be struggling with their confidence, and whether you've kind of got any tips and advice on how you've kind of managed through and kind of how you're coming out the other end of it.
Yeah, I mean, even just in lockdown, it's gone up and down and changed around, because 18 months is such a long time, right? So yeah, in the beginning, I was genuinely, I had a friend who lives in Wales, who was calling me almost every day because I was having panic attacks. And the reason I was having panic attacks was because I was on my own. Interestingly, lots of stuff about my relationship and being a single parent really bubbled up. And I think it was because I felt so alone. I felt so responsible for my children that I started looking and going, well, you're all okay because you've got another person, and that was really hard. It's almost like I had to deal with the breakup again, to a degree. And then I sort of I felt like I'd started to try and get a bit of a social life, started to try and date a little bit, mostly unsuccessfully, but, putting myself out there, trying new things. And then it had just been all come to a stop. I was worrying. I was like, oh my God, when is this going to end? This is the rest of my life. And I do get a bit of anxiety. So it did kind of spiral a little bit. But actually, the main things that came out of it, and we're still not really out of it, are we? But I learned to be with myself. I learned that I've got a really strong introverted side, and I learned how to like nurture that in myself, be on my own. It gave me the opportunity to try new things. Like I tried some crafting, which is, you know, not me at all, but again, back to that sort of like, who am I? Like learning, trying, discovering. And then my main advice would be, as we start to come out of this, is just not to push yourself. I think, again, being someone on social media, I like to contradict myself. It is really hard when we see it looks like the world is opening back up and everyone's out there having an amazing fun time. But that is all you see. And I know it's a cliche, just remember it's whatever percentage of people's lives. But yeah, I am personally easing myself back into trying these things that I started to try, like socializing, and possibly I haven't been on any dates, but you know, I might. But I'm being really kind to myself and really easy on myself, and accepting that, you know, there's a little bit of me that's a hermit that kind of became like that because of the lockdown, but that's okay too. Like, it's actually helping me to really assess when I'm invited or asked to go out for a drink or something like that, because of the way we've been living. I'm using that as an opportunity to go, right, what are the pros and the cons if I do this? And sometimes I don't want to put myself out of my comfort zone, and that's okay, and I'm not going to. And then I know when I do go out, I'll feel better about it because it will be on my terms. My kids were just running around.
No, that's fine. No, I think that's really great advice, because it is, like you said, it's been such an up and down 18 months for everybody, and none of us know what's coming now. It's, you know, it's not all ended all of a sudden, has it? So it's definitely something for us all to be a little bit more mindful of.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone has got any questions to finish off with for Yasmine, or if that's everything everybody wanted to ask.
I don't mind if anyone asks anything else, either like off topic or whatever. I'm happy to answer anything while I'm here. Oh, you've gone on mute.
Sorry, I had a 4-year-old crawling around next to me, so I was like, so a user says, I've been single 2 years and struggle with my confidence. Every time I think I'm ready to date, I talk myself out of doing it and talk myself down. He's moved on. He moved on while they were together, and I certainly don't want to be with him, but I find it so hard to get myself out there. Any tips on how to start a new relationship after an abusive one?
Oh yes. So I have like a couple of like multiple dating fails under my belt. I think there's lots of sides to this. So certainly I always recommend, if it's in your mind that you would like to start dating, just give it a go. Like just try. You never know. However that is that you want to try that, like whether it's like speed dating, using an app or whatever, just give it a go, and just keep checking in with yourself about how you feel. Certainly in the earlier days, I was really, I wanted to date for the wrong reasons. I wanted to date because I wanted to find someone who would love me, and to prove my ex wrong that of course I would find someone else. He also moved on while we were together, so he is still with the girl that he last cheated on me with, and I found that really hard for a really long time. And it wasn't because I wanted him. I was happy a week after he'd gone. Like, you know, in terms of actually him being in a relationship with him, I so did not want that back. But I just thought, he's a really horrible person. I think I'm all right. How the hell am I still single? You know, and that really, really bothered me. And I think I ended up kind of making too many exceptions. Sorry, one of my kids was screaming. Making too many compromises when I was first dating. So I was like, oh well, he was a bit rude, but that's okay, you know, those kind of things. So I'd say give it a go and try it, but really check in with yourself about how those people are making you feel, because sadly, I think the dating world, and I think anyone would say this, whether they've been in an abusive relationship or not, is just full of people that are not very nice. It's quite hard to trust people, and you need to find your own ways of getting to that point. And probably that is much bigger and stronger when you have had an abusive relationship. So yeah, I just think give it a go, give it a try. Try and work on remembering that actually the fact that you are single and you've taken time to be by yourself, to start to heal yourself, to make your life how you want it to be. He couldn't do that. He had to jump from one to the other. He couldn't be by himself. And I know with my ex, he couldn't be by himself because he just can't be. And actually, I'm really proud that 2 years on, I'm still single, but I'm enjoying my life. I've got a smile on my face and I'm happy because of me. And I haven't needed another person to create that. So, you know, give yourself a pat on the back that whilst you might look at him and think, well, how have you got a partner? Actually, you're the one that's winning. You've been able to be on your own and achieved so much in that time.
No, I think that's great advice. I think someone in the chat as well has said most important thing is to make a list of your non-negotiable things, like being a smoker, etc., and don't shift on them, which I think is really good. And read up on red flags and revisit them throughout. So I guess maybe, yeah, like even if they don't happen on day 1, they might happen on day 10 or day 20. So kind of still have them at the forefront. Someone else has said, my ex recently gave me the advice to tell myself, I want something kind. I don't want something. I'm not sure I understand this. I want something kind, not I don't want someone nasty. I don't know if you can elaborate on your comment because I'm not sure if I'm reading it right. Someone else has said, remember you're the priority, don't settle, get comfortable being single and date for fun and to complement your life. You don't need a person to complete you. So really nice kind of thoughts as well. So I don't know if anyone else has got any questions or comments or anything that they want to ask Yasmine. Trying to get a 4-year-old to go to sleep when it's this hot outside is an impossible task, I have learned this week.
See, my face has been getting like redder and redder, like there's one I've been sitting here, there's like no breeze.
Oh no, thank you, Yasmine. Though I've loved it. It's been absolutely brilliant. I think it's so nice to hear from someone who has been through it and kind of is talking from their own experience. So like I know I said to you before we got on the call, sometimes that's the best advice and kind of the best to hear from someone. It just isn't, because yeah, they can give their experience of it, which is, you can't learn everything from a textbook or reading stuff online. It makes such a difference. So thank you.
Yeah. I think
there's lots of people in the chat saying thank you as well, which is lovely, saying it's brilliant. It's been their first Frollo talk and it's really been brilliant, really enjoyed it. So really lovely feedback.
Oh, thank you. No, I've really enjoyed it. I've been a bit sort of, I feel like I've been a bit jittery when I'm talking, but just really conscious that everybody will have such different experiences. And so I tried to focus on the things that I believe that everybody can do, like, you know, find who they really are, what they like, and focus on the confidence inside all of us. And then, you know, the outside stuff will naturally happen.